my name is Roxanna Edwards. I'm an economist at the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the Office of Employment and Unemployment Statistics. And today I'm going to talk to you about one of the strongest trends in the US labor force, the rapid growth of Hispanics as part of the labor force. Most of the data that you will see today is from the Current Population Survey, which is the main source or the primary source of the US labor force statistics, including the unemployment rate, which we tabulate every month in the employment situation news release. Let's start. Back in 1973, the proportion of Hispanics who were part of the US non-institutional population was 4%, and that number has grown all the way up to 18% in 2022. In the last years, we can see that this growth has been a little bit more pronounced. And when looking at the big numbers in the last 10 years, the population growth of Hispanics has accounted for 45% of the US population growth. The labor force. When we talk about the labor force, we talk about people who are either employed or unemployed. Hispanics have increased their participation in the US labor force. Back in 2001 was 12%, and that number has increased to 19% in 2022. And it's expected to reach 30% in the year 2060. I just want to mention here that these are projections and they come from the Employment Projections Office, which is also part of BLS. The labor force, we have something that we define as the prime working age. Those are people ages 25 to 54. And when looking at the Hispanic or Latino labor force versus the non-Hispanic or Latino labor force, we can see that their Hispanics are a little bit younger. Now, if we add the younger age group, which are the 16 to 24, we can see that that number increases to 84%. That means 84% of the Hispanic labor force are 54 years or younger versus 75 for the non-Hispanic. BLS also tabulates data on veterans. And all I wanted to point out here is that veterans accounted for 5% of the prime working age in the labor force. And from that number, 11.8% were of Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. I also would like to mention that Hispanics who are veterans, their labor force participation rates are higher than for non-veterans. Now let's move to employment. We're counting here people who have a job. When we look at the employment growth in the last decade, we know that Hispanics accounted for 47% of that growth. That's almost half. But if we look at the individual groups, let's talk first about the total US population. The employment growth for the total population in the last 10 years was 11%. For the non-Hispanic population, that was 7%, and Hispanics had an employment growth of 34% in the last 10 years. So in other words, Hispanics were the primary drivers of employment growth in the US in the last decade. 1/4 of Hispanics work in management and professional and related occupations. This compares to 47 for the non-Hispanic population. Hispanics also have a big participation in service occupations with 23%. Management, professional, and related occupations are also the ones with the highest earnings, and Hispanics are underrepresented in these occupations. Now let's go one level down. When we look at the occupations with the highest proportion of Hispanics, we have that in the service occupations, we have building and grounds cleaning and maintenance occupations with 40% and food preparation with 28%. So when looking at a level of down from the major occupational groups, we can see that these two that are part of service occupations, Hispanics have a high participation in those two. And also under natural resources and construction, we have farming, fishing, and forestry with almost 45% and construction with 40%. So after discussing the labor force participation rate of Hispanics, their employment growth, and what occupations are the ones with more proportion of Hispanics, let's look where's the future for the Hispanic labor force. So on your left, you're going to see the fast growing occupations in the next 10 years. And at the top of the list, we have nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners in the next 10 years is going to grow 46%. But when looking at the proportion of Hispanics that work as nurse practitioners, we have that 6.7% of Hispanics are nurse practitioners. This is also one of the occupations with the highest earnings at $120,000. From this list of fast-growing occupations, we can see that Hispanics are overrepresented in those with lower earnings. Let's look at cooks, for instance. In 2022, where the median pay was 30,000 and the proportion of Hispanics working as cooks was 36%. In 2022, we have that Hispanics earn 73% of what non-Hispanics earn. When looking at the differences by sex, we can see that women, the difference is a lot less. Hispanic women earn 76% of what non-Hispanic women earn versus men, where that proportion was 72%. Let me mention here that, when doing the comparison between Hispanics and non-Hispanics earnings, it's important to mention that this is at the broad level. There's so many factors that are not considered here, such as skills, work experience, and so many other factors. And now just a brief summary of what I just discussed with you today. We have that Hispanics accounted for 19% of the US labor force in 2022, and that number is expected to reach 30% in the year 2060. 84% of the Hispanic labor force is 54 years old or younger versus 75 for the non-Hispanics. Hispanics accounted for 47% of employment growth in the last decade. And when looking at the top fast-growing occupations, Hispanics were overrepresented in those with lowest paying occupations. When looking at earnings, we have that Hispanics earned 73% of what non-Hispanics earned in 2022. And now I just would like to thank you, provide my contact information in case you want to learn more about our data. Thank you.